is a 50 millimeter anti-tank gun, which was something that they developed in the late 30s. And the 50 millimeter was okay for most tanks developed in the 30s, but as tank armor got thicker, they needed to go to the 75 millimeter, which was a mainstay in the German arsenal until the end of the war for anti-tank use. That could defeat any American tank with no problem. It could also defeat most Russian tanks at relatively close ranges. There's Allied troops that are working up their way towards the German lines, and they're going to try to take over these positions that the artillery is sitting in. Now that they've identified where the American or the German entrenchments are. Most of the weapons that you see with the Americans here, they're M1 Garands, a standard issue light infantry weapon. There's an 8-round clip-fed ammunition that went into the gun, and you can fire as quick as you pull the trigger. When you get to the end, it'll make a ping noise that it ejects the clip, and then it leaves the breech open so you can load 8 more rounds. It was much more effective than the Mauser. The Mauser is actually dating from an 1898 design. And with a bolt-action rifle, you can see the Germans working their bolts as they fire. They could fire 5 rounds before they would have to reload. And there's a relatively slow rate of fire compared to all the modern firearms that they were running up against. Even the British with bolt-action rifles, they had the ability to top it off at 10 rounds. The Germans augmented the infantryman's rifle with the MG34 and MG42 light squad machine guns. And those were very innovative for the time. You can see the Germans starting to move up with the squad there moving forward. And they're using what's referred to as a Kampflinie, or a battle line, where they're establishing their line in the middle. They go into the prone position so they make as small target as possible. The armored car that's moving up is a 231. It's armed with a 20 millimeter cannon and MG34 light squad machine gun. So it could be used as a reconnaissance vehicle. It could move relatively fast. The 20 millimeter would be able to penetrate any positions. Yeah, once that armored car came in, these guys realized it's kind of over. So these guys are going to mop up and take all these guys prisoner. But that armored car was kind of the thing that made the difference. That 20 millimeter could penetrate brick walls, and it could also go through entrenchment walls that are 3 feet thick. And the machine gun could lay down quite a bit of fire, but it's basically a moving pillbox. The 8 wheels that you see on it helps distribute the ground pressure, so it can go over soft ground, and it makes it a lot easier to go over even muddy terrain. It's also elongated so it can distribute the weight more evenly over a longer distance, so it won't sink into the ground. There's probably less ground pressure per tire here than there is on an F-150. And the Germans are coming under fire, so they're pulling back to a little bit more defendable positions in the middle of an open field. The 251 half-track is an armored personnel carrier that would be able to carry 12 people. It has a MG34 MG42 light squad machine that would be on an armored plate that's in the front. So again, the vehicle could get used as an armored car, but then the guys could either bail over the sides or they could go out the back doors to make a quick escape. Once they do, they would either use that vehicle as cover or it'd be used as a mobile pillbox as the troops moved up to suppress enemy fire. And then they would try to have the infantry move up while under the cover of that machine gun. The German truck in the background, I believe, is a Chevrolet. Chevrolet and Ford actually produced quite a few trucks that were exported to Europe in the 1930s for various European armies. And this is an example of one of those American-made trucks that ended up in German service. Ford actually had its own plant actually in Germany producing trucks for Europe. And the 1940 and the 39, 40, 41 versions were produced until the American company had to cut ties with its German subsidiary because the Americans became involved in the war. But they continued producing Ford trucks throughout the war.
Eagles are moving up, so watch yourself. Get out to the right!
So you can see some airborne troops that are starting to move up on the right that were trying to follow the sounds of the guns in this situation. And they were able to disrupt the Germans with what they're doing on the course that they're deploying. Some of the Germans along the field are infiltrating trench lines that are about 3 to 4 feet tall. That gives them quite a bit of protection unless you start having 50 caliber or 20 millimeter or heavier fire. Also on the east side, you see a Panzer II tank that's coming through. It's armed with a 20 millimeter gun that was fired in an MG-34. It was a very effective tank that was used in the early part in 1939, 1940, and maybe the beginning of the 1941 invasion of Russia, but it quickly became outclassed by most Russian tanks. So while it might have been fast and used for reconnaissance at some point, later in the war it was used mainly as a training vehicle, or they would take the top armor off in the turret and they would mount like infantry guns, 105 howitzers, or French 47 millimeter guns to make the mobile artillery pieces. There's in the center of the field you see a Hetzer tank that's carrying. It's actually a tank destroyer. It's built on a 38T chassis, and its sloped armor was very effective against repelling rounds. And it has a very low profile for an armored vehicle, which means it can hide easily behind walls and behind bushes and even in tall grass. But its 75 millimeter high velocity gun was able to devastate most Allied armor. These are Panzer Grenadiers that are moving up to try to attack these guys. One of the common tactical doctrines that were used during World War II, anywhere really, even today, you hear about it in the Ukrainian conflict, is when you have your enemy attacking you, one of the things you do is you immediately try to counterattack. So you charge at them and you try to push back through their lines, because their lines are spread thin, they're not very familiar with the terrain. And if you disrupt their attack, you can punch a hole in their line pretty easily and make it back to their lines. So they're trying to mount a counterattack to move forward. But in this case, the Allies are reinforcing. So now they have armored vehicles that are moving up. The first one is an M22 Locust. It's a very, very light tank that was developed by the Americans to be actually parachute dropped or glider dropped into show-and-tell territories along with the paratroopers to give them more support, because paratroopers are without any sort of armored vehicles, and if they are attacked by armored vehicles like you see here, this would be a little bit of a problem for them. But the M22 is armed with a 37 millimeter cannon. It has a coaxial 30 caliber machine gun. It has a 2 or 3 man crew, and they were used in the later stages of the war, late 44 or 45, by the British actually, to support their infantry units. Behind it is a Stuart light tank. The Stuart remained in the service with the U.S. Army all the way through the war. We had horses in the U.S. cavalry all the way up until 1940-41, and that's where the horses were finally retired, and they were replaced by armored vehicles like the Stuart. The Stuart served in armored cavalry units all the way through the end of World War II because they were very fast. They could drive at 45 miles an hour, quite the armor, so they could go fast. But they also had their 37 millimeter gun, a coaxial 30 caliber machine gun, and a bow machine gun in a holster mount using a mobile pillbox. And on top of it is a 50 caliber machine gun. That was not necessarily meant for ground targets. It was actually meant to be an anti-aircraft defense against German airplanes. But the German Air Force, by the time the Americans were advancing all of 1944, it pretty much was decimated. And it's a rare occurrence when you start seeing this kind of escape from American positions. There's a cannon a little bit further back that's mounted on an American M2 contract. essentially be a total tank gun, similar to the pack guns that you see on the German side. But it made more sense to put it actually on an armored vehicle that you can move forward, because to deploy these guns and drop them in, if you could start getting overrun like a position like this, it was hard to redeploy these guns and attach them to a truck to drive away. So mounting on half-tracks, which the Germans also did, made them mobile tank destroyers, which made a lot of sense. The other armored car that you see in the field is an M8 Greyhound armored car. The M8 was designed principally as a reconnaissance vehicle. It was issued to reconnaissance companies throughout the American Army, especially the armored divisions. It had a 37mm cannon, coax, 30 caliber machine gun, crew of 4. It was very fast. It could go about 60 miles an hour. It was designed to make contact with the enemy and then be able to retreat very quickly. And its speed, while it was lightly armored, the speed was actually what helped it out. And it's similar to the German armored car. It's got 6 wheels to help distribute that ground pressure. Took out the Hetzer. The Panzer I's down and the crew's bailed out. So you can see one of the soldiers advancing with the Thompson submachine gun, very typical of NCOs and officers in the field. High rate of fire but very close range. But the 45mm slug, 45 caliber slug was very effective at close range. You can see the troops also using the armored vehicles for cover, like you saw with the Germans earlier, which helps afford quite a bit of cover. They can move up to a position, and it makes them a lot easier to jump off rather than going across those open fields. That you see that has a tarp on the back for a cover. It's a weapons carrier used by the U.S. military. It was referred to as a weapons carrier because it's designed to carry heavier weapons. Mortars, which would also require a few mortar rounds to go with it, which are very heavy. It could also carry anti-tank ammunition and tow the anti-tank with it. And it also could be used as a supply vehicle. It was a very commonly ubiquitous vehicle that you would see with the U.S. Army. The jeeps that you see further back, you see one with a 50 caliber that's firing. The 50 caliber was actually put on the jeeps for anti-aircraft defense, but they found that they were used for anti-infantry. They were issued with 30 caliber machine guns, but they were quickly upgraded in some cases to 50 caliber because the 50 caliber would be able to penetrate light armor. It could also penetrate positions like these trenches that you see. It could also penetrate brick walls on houses to hit enemy infantry that are within there. You can see this medical group that's coming through. The medics are carrying specialized pouches and hauling these guys off. The medics, in some cases, conscientious objectives, if they don't want to necessarily be in the infantry, would volunteer so they could be within the medic corps to try to help people out. Their job was to stabilize patients so they could survive shock and the initial injuries. They get them back to a bandaging station and then on to a field hospital and a primary bandaging station to stabilize them. The Americans have pretty much pushed these guys into a redoubt except for a few holdouts. Most of the Germans would surrender if given the opportunity because once backed into a corner and realizing it's a lost battle, most of them would give the opportunity to surrender and then come out. However, on the German army also had a sister component of the SS. And the SS was a political arm of the military that was very, very devout to the Nazi cause. And those are the people that they often had issues with holdouts and fighting to the last man sort of situations. in the middle of mopping up operations at this point to try to clear out the last of the enemy infantry that's hunkered down. They're trying to make a last-ditch charge. The Germans in the trench thought they might be able to flank the positions of the Americans, not realizing that there's quite a bit of tank support there.